Oral history has been accepted by the courts as a valid way of establishing the history of Aboriginal peoples. And it goes back to, I guess, really the case where oral history made its debut, so to speak, would be Delgamuukw, which was a title case in British Columbia. And the whole issue of oral history has been evolving since Delgamuukw, which was in the early 80s, and many cases have dealt with the issue of oral history. But there's a recognition by the courts that an understanding by the courts that Aboriginal people were an oral people. The Crown wrote things out. The Aboriginal people didn't write things out, and they passed a history on down through the generations by telling one another what happened. And the courts have given effect to that, and the courts will accept oral history. And it's important, I think, that we as Canadians understand and appreciate the significance of this, because to not to give to effect to oral history is to deny the history of the Aboriginal people, because, again, as I say, they're an oral. Their traditions are oral. So if we don't recognize the fact that they pass on their stories through the generations, then we fail to recognize them as a people, in my respectful view. So again, the courts have given credence to that, and you'll see in looking at the cases that oral history is now an integral part of many of the cases on treaty and Aboriginal rights that wind their way through the courts. Reconciliation is a word that I think that first or primarily appears in a Supreme Court decision. I believe it was in Sparrow, and they talk about Section 35 of the Constitution Act. Section 35 of the Constitution Act, again, gives constitutional protection to Aboriginal and treaty rights. It recognizes and affirms existing Aboriginal and treaty rights. And the Supreme Court has interpreted that as saying that Section 35 calls out for a reconciliation between the Aboriginal and calls out for reconciliation of Aboriginal and treaty rights. That these rights are dynamic, they continue to exist, that they're now constitutionally entrenched, and that there has to be an understanding, a recognition by Canadian society that these rights are here, they're here to stay, and that they have meaning, that they're not frozen in time, that they're dynamic, that the Aboriginal people are not to be forgotten in society, that they are an integral part of society. Their rights are important. They need to be recognized. They need to be given life. That's how I understand reconciliation.